Why should you care about copyright and attribution? Well, do you value ideas and intellectual work? Do you want our students to become ethical citizens? The whole point of attribution is to give people the appropriate credit for their hard work and ideas. Copyright is the legally codified way of ensuring people get credit. If you don't pay attention to copyright, or even to attributing the sources you use with students or that they use in their work with you, it might be because you think fair use is like a blanket, codifying all of your uses and those of your students as lawful. More on fair use later. But first, let's stop and think about why we should consider our uses, beyond simply the possibility of legal action against us. We are raising ethical citizens, future academics and artists and writers and thinkers and leaders. We are models for their behavior, their introduction to the world, where examples of unethical intellectual piracy abound. Let's come back to attribution in a minute, but first, copyright. Basically, the creator of anything published in any way, including photos uploaded somewhere that someone else can see them, automatically is granted the legal protections of copyright. Automatically. This includes written work, images and photographs, video, art, and performances. Unless the creator has waived or signed over their rights, only that person or the rights holder can make copies, distribute copies, modify the original work to reuse it, perform or display the work publicly, or digitally transmit the work. There are ways for creators to waive or modify their rights to allow others to use them openly. They can offer permission for use, sell or offer various levels or types of rights via licenses, such as with a Creative Commons license, or, especially today on the open web, agree to a posting or publishing clause which might transfer or strip them of their rights. This is common on certain online forums or sites. Or, after a certain amount of time has passed, in most cases, 75 years after the creator has died, although there are many exceptions, copyright is up, and then the work automatically becomes the property of the public domain. Then there's fair use. This is the clause of copyright law that is in place to encourage academic, artistic, and scientific progress by allowing certain uses of copyrighted material in certain contexts. It does not cover every situation of use within a school. Fair use is not neat or clear-cut. It's determined on a case-by-case basis, asking the user for every time they use copyrighted material, which is just about everything unless stated otherwise, to consider 4 factors. Factor 1, purpose of the use. How thoroughly does the use of the work fit the purpose of copyright? Remember, the purpose of copyright is to advance learning and ideas. Factor 2, nature of the work being used. Published versus unpublished, fictional versus non-fictional. Think of it this way. If someone disseminates someone else's work before it gets published, the creator has less incentive to continue their work than if they had received just compensation for it. And factual works are more obviously tied to advancing learning. So a scholarly article is more likely to fit this factor of fair use than might a creative work. Although, remember, this is a case-by-case, and all 4 factors must be considered. The third factor is amount used. Smaller portions of the work rather than the entire work. The smaller and less significant portion of the work used, the more likely your use of it fits this factor. And then there's number 4, your use's effect on the market for the work. Copyright is intended to help someone receive just compensation for their hard work and ideas. Use of the work shouldn't be a way of getting around having to pay for it. If these 4 factors are met to a reasonable degree, it's fair use. If not, I bet you thought I was going to say, if the fair use determination is unclear, you shouldn't use it, period. The truth is, it can be a little fuzzy, to determine some of these factors in schools. So here is where we consider best practices. Take the time to look for the copyright status or applicable licenses or waivers. Seek out materials, images, resources that are rights cleared, licensed for school use, or in the public domain. One easy place to look for access to good resources is on the Staff Resources Resource Board on your MyGDS. Direct students to resources that are also available to them on the LMS and high school library resource boards. Model and discuss ethical use as a regular teaching practice. And also expect it of your students at an age-appropriate level. If you're not sure what's expected in this arena for the age that you teach, invite your librarian to a grade level meeting to discuss where your students fall in the larger curriculum arc for information skills. When reproducing content for students, don't simply make a bunch of copies to hand out unless you have permission. Don't download the article as a PDF and then post it on your MyGDS page. Instead, give them the permalinks to the content via the licensed distributor for that content. Or, if possible, help them get in some practice with looking up the resource for themselves with a little scaffolding. And if you find yourself stumped, contact your librarian. Attribution! Attribution goes a long way. After all, the whole point of copyright is to give people credit for their ideas and their work. 8 out of 10 times in a school, your use falls under the tenets of fair use. But that's not really the point, right? What we're trying to do is teach students how to ethically use other people's work in their quest for knowledge. So, talk about attribution to your students. When you show a film, let it play through the credits and point out how many people worked on it. Who's the author? The other creators? The publisher? When was it made? When you have to use images or diagrams while teaching, model use of repositories for rights-cleared images, diagrams, etc., and point out where the citation can be found, or at least the elements of the citation, such as creator, title, publisher, date published and posted, URL. Use Britannica's ImageQuest or other good resources, or show students how you're using Google's image tools to limit your results to images with Creative Commons licenses and where you can see that information. When it's not on the fly, take the time to put citations in your slides, under the images, in a final slide, wherever. Model correct citation styles, MLA style in the lower and middle school, and in the high school outside of the history, social sciences, or sciences departments, which use Chicago or APA, respectively. Never use pirated content or accept it from students as sources, and point it out when you see it. For example, YouTube uploads of obviously copyrighted materials posted by iffy users. When you're in a serious time crunch, don't just ignore the issue altogether. Give a mea culpa to your students. Tell them that you didn't take the time to attribute, but that you should have, where you could have found it and why you didn't. Ask your librarian. During project planning, we can talk you through the best way to incorporate attribution into your students' projects. We can meet with students or present to your classes. And if you plan well enough, we might even agree to help you with grading source selection and citations. One last thing, videos. Showing videos actually fits under a different area of copyright law known as Section 110, which discusses the way public performances can happen without the authorization of the rights holder. In addition to the 4 general fair use principles, video use must fit 4 additional factors. 1. It must be shown during face-to-face teaching. It must be shown specifically in a classroom or in other instructional setting. It is part of instruction and directly related to the content being taught. It's shown from a lawfully made and obtained copy. So, with Section 110, just as with fair use, Purpose is important, as well as setting. In class, with an instructional purpose related to that class, with a copy that was legally obtained for the institution. Thus, a DVD bought for your department or owned by the library can be shown in class for specific instructional purpose. Streaming video is a whole different thing because the videos aren't owned by the institution, but rather are rented to individuals for viewing by the streaming company, which has, in turn, license agreements with the rights holders of the films. When it comes to streaming services such as Netflix, Amazon Prime, or Hulu, their license agreements, which prevent public performances, render Section 110's clause invalid. This puts the use of these streaming services for school viewing in a legal warning zone for two reasons. One, the content is not lawfully obtained. And two, the user would be in violation of their terms of service agreement with the streaming company because they agreed not to use the service for public performance. So no, it is not legal or ethical to use Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, any of these in school. There are a few streaming services to which GDS currently subscribes, which are completely legal and ethically approved for classroom use. Classroom Video on Demand, BrainPop, and Discovery Streaming. We think it's also acceptable to use your educator's card to access DC Public Library's Canopy or Access Video on Demand, to which GDS does not subscribe individually, as long as they are used in class during direct instruction. As far as showing videos outside of instructional settings, such as for entertainment purposes, GDS is looking into buying blanket performance rights that will cover a large number of production companies. But be aware and be cautious, and when in doubt, ask the librarians to help you get ethical and legal access to films. In summary, model ethical behavior. Always obtain and cite your sources appropriately. Require ethical behavior. Scaffold age-appropriate citation from your students for every project. In the LMS, check with your grade level librarians to know what's expected by grade level. Remember that the goal here is creating ethical citizens. So if you're too rushed to cite everything every once in a while, don't ignore the fact that you skipped a step. Tell your students what you should have done and why. Remember, images are rights protected and must be cited back to the original content creator, just like text. And videos usually need to meet a strict criteria, including instructional purpose. Get help. The library has numerous resources to help you access content. We hope you learned something from this. If nothing else, don't forget, you can always ask your librarian for guidance, co-planning, and co-teaching about copyright and attribution.